I'm Charlotte McLeod with investingnews.com, and here today with me is David Morgan, publisher of the Morgan Report. Really good to have you. First time in person for a little while, so good to see you.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
Yes, and we're at the New Orleans Investment Conference, and we've made it all the way to, I think, day 3. So I think it's fair to ask at this point, what are your takeaways so far? How is sentiment feeling? Anything you would mention?
Sentiment is better than it's been, let's say, in a few years past, but I don't think it's as strong as I expected. I try to come without expectations, but with gold doing such a move from 2,000 to 2,800, I think there'll be more enthusiasm. The mining companies, there are a lot here, haven't got the boost from the gold price, a lot of them, most of them. But I think it's a cautious optimism, and I think that the hardcore investors, the people that have been seasoned and through a cycle or 2 or 3 or 4, are aware of where we're at. And I think they're patient and they're not overly one way or the other. So, on balance, it's good.
Okay. All right. And I've got a bunch of questions on silver and gold for you. I feel a little bit bad because in your presentation yesterday, you went in a totally different direction. So we'll do a little bit on that toward the end. But looking back to our last conversation, that was in May, and you're pretty accurate with your call on silver for 2024. You said probably we'd get to mid-30s this year, which we did for some time. So if we look forward to 2025, what can we expect from the silver price?
Yeah. Well, right now, Charlotte, I see a consolidation phase, and that'll probably go for a few months. It could go for several, and then a breakout for both gold and silver, probably not simultaneously, but probably pretty close, and a new leg up for both the metals. I'm looking for like 40 or so in 2025. It's really hard to predict because technically there's no resistance above 35 or so. So it has nothing holding it back from stale longs that want to sell because the price reached where they bought it. But it could go to 50. I really doubt it. I think there's a mitigation between the new administration, a lot of turmoil in, the war efforts between the Middle East and currently Ukraine. And so there's these factors outside of the financial/economic system that will mitigate, I think. I think that if things go the way they're predicted, that may stifle people that might normally go into a safe haven that won't, because their feeling is that things are better, they're going to stay better, I don't have to worry.
Yeah, I think heading toward next year, definitely so much uncertainty. So thank you for going there with the silver price. I know people are also wondering longer term, right? We're in this cycle for gold and silver that is most likely going to last some years. So what do you see as silver's potential during that time span?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not a big Elliott wave guy, but I do believe in the main thesis, 5 waves, 3 up and 2 down. And by my count, we've done the 4, and we're in the last leg up. And if that is true, then I wouldn't expect it to go more than a few years. Now, I could be wrong. Things change. Long term, I think silver is probably one of the best things you can do on a legacy investment if you're willing to wait, a decade or so. But I think we may get a blow-off top in 2026 or so. We could get there and then come down and consolidate like we did for these 10 years, 12 years. Gold got, as you know, you were early on in the investment community, and we saw silver and gold do so well for 11 years straight. And then, I don't know about you, I won't speak for you, but as for me, I thought we had a 2-year correction at most, and it was like a 12-year correction. Anyway, that's what I think. I think we're going to get a big move up in the next few years, and then we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and on the note of things that happened in the past, I was wondering if we can do just a brief history lesson on silver. So I think people are pretty familiar with what happened with the Hunt brothers and that price spike. But the 2011 one, I don't know if people necessarily remember what led to that. So can you go over that a little bit?
Yeah, there was a spike, parabolic move in 2011, and I forget what I know what the breakout point for the whole move was because I did a futures trade. I had people that were on my paid service that retired early. It broke out at 19. It went from 19 to 26. So when you're leveraged, that's a lot of money. And then I sold at 26, and then QE2 was announced. And most of the silver bugs and a lot of financial people said, holy moly, they're printing more. Silver's going to run. So I jumped right back in. So I got 19 to 26, got out, got back in at 26, and rode it all the way to the top at 48. I called it like 2 days before the exact top. I don't always do that. And but it was just a feeding frenzy. Basically, the banks had kind of stepped aside and let the markets determine, the rest of the market determine what the price would be. So you had, smaller entities buying, retail, of course, funds, all kinds of things. And I call the top basis, it's parabolic, and the amount of subscription I was getting. I was getting like 3 times the subscription rate that I'd ever gotten the whole time. And I said, this isn't going to last long. I think this is it. Just a side note, when I made that call, this is it, it lasted like 2 more days. Some of my peer group, I won't name names, said, you are so messed up. This is going to $100. You're going to look like an absolute fool. You're going to lose all of your credibility. What the heck are you doing? You better take back that call right now. You really muffed it. Well, I was right. And they never wrote me back and said, good call. Go ahead, sorry.
No. I love that story. Thank you for going into that. So that's kind of a picture of what's going on in silver right now and into the future. Looking over to gold, I think earlier this year you were looking for 2,500 gold in 2024. So we got there and then we just kept going. So main drivers for gold that you're seeing right now.
Well, it's uncertainty. I mean, the banks know it. The banks, don't really publicize it, but it is as Dines used to say, the monetary hitching post of the universe. It's a tier 1 asset. It's as good as any security. It's as good as the U.S. Treasury. And it's kind of a fallback position for the banks. And that spills over into, the more astute money managers or wealth managers and that type of thing, family offices. And it just goes down the scale all the way. And then eventually it gets to the public because of, shows like this, people are more aware of monetary problems than the general public. But the general public will catch on as well. Food prices keep going up. I can't afford, I'm getting paid enough, but I'm not able to, the value of that money isn't as good as it used to be. I can't buy the groceries I used to, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what happens. So it goes down the scale from top to bottom. And just at the end, the run to gold's almost everybody. Because of really, I hate to use the word, but it's a fear trade. They're afraid that their money is going to lose so much value that they better spend it now rather than save it.
Yeah, and okay, so an interesting element, I think, we talked before about the upcoming election, and I had a conversation with you and with many people who were saying, there's going to be a lot of turmoil surrounding that election, no matter who's elected. And it's interesting because it feels like now we're getting all these new ideas from Trump, all the new appointments, and that's definitely introducing uncertainty. But it feels like maybe we didn't get that high degree of turmoil. Is that still coming? What do you think about that?
Well, that's a tough one. This is just a guess. I think there's more turmoil ahead. I think the transition's been smoother than some of us expected. And so far, so good, and I hope it remains that way. But it isn't January 20th yet. And I'm open-minded, and I don't have any expectations. I'll watch the, chips fall as they may, but I do expect there'll probably be some turmoil.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are looking for, all right, we're coming to the second Trump presidency. We've seen him before, so we might kind of know what's coming. But any special considerations for people investing during this coming 4 years?
I think it'll be less regulation. I think it'll be better for the mining industry. I think on balance it'll be good for gold. And I do think that it's not going to be what some people expect, meaning that, this committee with Vivek and Musk and even Ron Paul's involved, I understand, they can cut back a great deal of the government. A lot of the bureaucracy will be filled by AI. But if they did every, let's say, bloat in the government and put it on a computerized system, that's still only 20% of the budget. 80% of the budget can't be taken away. Military and Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. So with 20%, if you do the math, that comes out where we're just about even on tax receipts to budget with a slight deficit. So from my perspective as a math guy, I don't see where you're going to get out of a very perhaps best case scenario, very low to maybe no deficit at all. So I hope I'm wrong. Maybe I'm overlooking something. That's a broad brush view. things could change, could be different than I stated, but doing the basics, that's what it comes out.
Can you go back to your comment about using AI in the government? I've heard about a lot of potential uses for AI, but not that one, at least.
Well, yeah, it's part of my speech from yesterday. But what will happen is, let's just take, I forget what it's called in Canada, but in the States, most states call it the DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles. You walk in, I don't know about Canada, it's probably like us, you stand in line for like 3 hours, finally get up to the window, some grumpy person's there, and they shut the window, it's my coffee break, and they walk off, and then you wait another 15 minutes, okay, can I help you? And they go through the whole thing, and 3 hours later, they take your picture, and they issue your new driver's license. Now you just go to a kiosk. The kiosk, you'll sit in front of it, it'll take an iris scan, it'll say, hello, Charlotte. It's nice to see you. We see that you only had, you had 0 accidents and no traffic tickets. Your license is good for 6 years. It'll be popping out. There it is. Have a nice day. So you're going to get this thing accomplished in, 4 minutes or less, and you don't have anyone to talk to. It's a machine, and it's going to accelerate the process, so people will be very happy about that. And then as far as expenses go, it's going to be a lot less than paying the structure they have now. Especially they put the kiosks in already at public buildings, so they don't have to rent space in another building. So that's an example. There'll be several like that where you interface. We're already seeing it, not only in government but in private industry, where you call in and there's an A on the other end. It used to be somebody from, foreign countries sometimes, and they would identify yourself, give us your phone number usually. Okay, now they've identified you, and they'll go through the chain. And very seldom do they get to where they have to say, hold on, I'll get you human. So that's the direction. But no, it'll be pervasive with Vivek and Elon. That's exactly what they're going to do.
Yeah, and just anecdotally, I think going through the airport to come here, I did almost that exact scenario because I've got my Nexus. They take a picture of you, or the screen looks at you, and then they know exactly who you are. You don't have to show them anything. So very interesting. So going back to your talk yesterday night here, all about the new monetary system. I'm curious. So we've got Trump coming. How do you think he'll feel about central bank digital currencies?
I'm concerned because he's already indicated he's for digital ID. Digital ID is the foundation for a CBDC. You have to have certainty in your identification. Once that's accomplished, then you put them on the CBDC. And so I think he is very favorable to it. If you look at Larry Fink of BlackRock, I mean, most of the people that are in our community understand how powerful they are, how much control they have, and what their thinking is. And it's basically there's people that are superior to other people, and we know what to do, and we know what's best for you, kind of an attitude. Of course, I have a very different one. So I'm concerned. I mean, he could do a lot of stuff that make the conservative side very, very happy, and they will be. But to me, that's a little bit of a distraction if the monetary system continues to go down the road that we're on, which means China's already set the scene for what the global empire will look like under the new monetary system. And as far as I can tell right now, I'll look you in the eye, look you in the eye. Look, I really believe that it's going to be, in our future, that's what they want. Whether it manifests or not remains to be determined. How much pushback we get, we'll have to see. But right now, I think Trump is actually on board for it.
And you had talked, so we're talking right now about central bank digital currency in the U.S., but you had mentioned China and also globally, coming together, bringing multiple, CBDCs together. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think people might focus on, all right, this is happening in my country, and miss that bigger picture.
Yeah, I do try to analyze things from the top down, the biggest picture, and then narrow it down. And the big picture is this ISO 20022, which is an edict that's been signed by everybody that says we're going to have this financial system based on this mandate. And that accounts for both the BRICS and the SWIFT system, everything that exists and everything that's going to exist. So if it goes to full-on CBDC, everybody clears through that set of rules. So I think the BRICS is important, and I think that it could mitigate them from the dollar somewhat. But the bottom line is the top tier is going to control things. And that's really what my speech was about, because it took it pretty much to the very top, which is the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements. And it's the bankers' banks, and all of them adhere to their mandate. And they've already done studies, they've done test cases, they've already got, the rules in place. And of course, I'll say spin it, but a lot of what they say is absolutely true. Speed, efficiency, lower costs. There's a lot of benefits to it, but there's also the downside. You have no anonymity, you have no privacy, but they put up a ruse and say, well, you have privacy because what we're going to do is on small transactions, we won't trace you, but on large ones, we will. Well, come on. They could trace every transaction. I made a joke during my speech. If I eat a candy bar, it's too small a purchase for them to trace until I buy too many candy bars. And then they'll say, hey, you're borderline diabetic, David. You can't buy any more candy, no matter how much money I have, right? Corny example, but you get my idea.
Exactly. And I think yesterday you also talked about, okay, so these things are happening. Maybe we can talk now a little bit about what can people do to resist this, because I think that's important, and there's a good crowd of people who would want to know.
Yeah, I think, I'm not a big believer in the political process, but it exists, and why not use it? Especially if you have what appears to be going on in the United States, which means a lot of people outside of government training that are more, not so much regular people. But you gotta let known what you need or what you want or what's wrong or what you think. And so I think you can still use the political process to some degree. I also think you can mitigate it on self-action. So of course gold and silver, but you have to have somebody to trade with. And unless you're like in a Mennonite community or a Amish community, or have a big community that really know what's going on, that are willing to do that, it will help, but it's not a total solution. I'll be talking about that in my workshop. I don't really have an answer for you, but my biggest answer, I think, is awareness. I think if enough people are aware and just refuse to do it, for a quick example off the top of my head, let's say you have 45 days to get down to your post office to get your real ID. So you either get a fingerprint, an eye scan, or something like that that's your body, which is you. And no one shows up. Now what are they going to do? It's a passive resistance. No one's being hurt, And so could that take place? It could, especially if people are waiting. Would it be no one shows up? Of course not. But it could be enough where they get 50%. Now what are we going to do? We got a problem. And how do we herd everybody in there? You could threaten them. You could, fine them. You can. So, and that's my take. And there are people that, of course, will disagree with me. I mean, David's radically to the right. I'm not, but that's how they see me. They want to box me in. And there's people that will agree with me. But, if you could use one word to define, my purpose, the way I see it, it's freedom. I like the silver and the gold and all the stories behind them and the monetary purposes thereof. But when it gets down to it, the way the system's going, the amount of gold and silver you have are going to be pretty much meaningless if you do not fit into the social credit system like the Chinese. So you could be a multimillionaire and not buy a candy bar because the system has said we control how you could spend your own money.
Yeah. Thank you for going over that. I think those are really important things for people to be thinking about right now. And before I let you go, I'm going to throw in a little bit of a wild card question, just because I think people associate you so strongly with silver. We talk about gold as well, but I know you cover so many different topics as well. So looking forward to 2025, what would be your highest conviction sector? Doesn't have to be gold or silver if it's not.
I think it'll be energy. Energy is the most important one of all, and I think there may be a rethinking of how we're going to use the energy that exists and marry it with the renewables in the most efficient manner, because really the return of what's called EROI, energy return on energy invested, is the way to look at it, not how much it costs. You can print an infinite amount of funny money. I think that will be, and I hope it will be, the best move that we're able to do and to rethink the best way to move forward on the energy sector. I mean, the renewables, I'll leave alone on my comment, but what we need is more energy, not less. And the renewables produce some, but they're not nearly as efficient as the dirty hydrocarbons. Yet, these AI structures take a lot more energy. Look at what Bitcoin takes in energy. It takes more energy, not less. So that would be my answer. And I'll just throw out one more. I mean, because I do look at a lot, as you know. And I'm really for the small modular reactors, you know. I mean, I'm not a nuclear physicist, you know, I got an engineering degree, but if you could cookie cutter these things that are as big as, 10 refrigerators and they power a neighborhood of, 100,000 homes and you're identical, so you just put them out, and the amount of radioactive material is so minimal that it's really not hazardous. I mean, why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we just pumping these things out right, left, and center instead of spending billions upon billions to make these huge edifices for these nuclear power plants that are always behind schedule and always cost twice what they predicted? If we could, but anyway, that's just an example, and like that may be, some nuclear physicist is out there saying, guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Maybe not, but at least if you can imagine it, it probably can be achieved. So why can't we at least look at that? So if something like that were to occur during this administration, well, I think it'd really get some political clout, because a lot of people will go, wow, maybe not solving the energy crisis, but certainly mitigating it to a great degree. So thanks for that question.
Yeah, and I think I'll keep that in mind for the next time we talk. We can do a little bit more on energy, but for now, I'll let you go unless you had any final words to leave people with.
If I could just plug Charlotte, I've worked very hard on trying to educate, and I've made making a documentary called The Silver Sunrise, and it's about the fear and control of money. It kind of puts a spiritual slant on the monetary question, which, to my knowledge, and I've read a lot, there really hasn't been that much written about. And I don't think there's been any documentary. Now, it's not full-on spiritual, and we got a bunch of yogis talking about money. It's pretty middle of the road, but still there's that aspect, like how much is enough? If you can never get enough, are you mentally secure? I mean, think about people that can never get enough. Something's not right there, in my opinion, anyway. So I've worked very hard. The filming's done. It's being edited now. It should be out by Christmas. And if you'd be so kind when it comes out, I'd like you to watch it and give me your feedback, and maybe we could do a quick talk about it.
Oh, I would love that. That's very exciting. Okay, definitely send over the link when it comes. I'll be excited to watch. Okay, thank you very much. Really good to have you in person. And once again, I'm Charlotte McLeod with investingnews.com, and this is David Morgan with The Morgan Report.